The block is hot, but so are both of these coaches' seats. Which one needs to win more?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF or Locked On Crossover, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and joining me is my guy, Mountaineer. Paul, thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen of every day. Whether you're a Knight or a Mountaineer, we got you both covered here on this crossover episode. Mountaineer Paul.
What's up, brother?
Before we started talking,
that music was hitting when you're opening. That music hit.
It did hit. It was slapping. I won't lie. Also slapping maybe one of these quarterbacks here in this game. Garrett Green versus Rizk. Now, before we started talking, you gave us a little bit of an update on Garrett Green. He was out a couple of games ago. This is his second game back. Can you talk about his health real quick before we get started?
Yeah, Garrett Green had a concussion against Kansas State. They were out for blood that night, man. But yeah, they hit him really hard a couple different times in that game. And the speculation is this is his second one this year. He had one, we think, in the offseason as well, which is why they performed so bad against Penn State and against a couple other teams this year. That's more speculation, although I've heard it from good sources. And it happened again against Kansas State. He didn't practice until the day before Cincinnati. So backup quarterback Nico Marchiol starts that game in a win, and also against Arizona. So he didn't play for 2 weeks. We got 2 wins with the backup. So, of course, everybody was happy when he came back last week against Baylor, obviously tongue-in-cheek. And he played extremely well in the game, almost 150 yards rushing. But it was all in the first half. So, people weren't exactly happy with the ending of the way the game ended.
Well, I think that this game could end up being the tale of the two quarterbacks. Obviously, UCF made a quarterback change a few games ago. They played BYU at the end of the game. They benched Jacurri Brown. They put Rizk in. He's not as much of a runner as Garrett Green, but he's no statue back there either. It occurs to me that this comes down to which quarterback is going to be able to actually make the plays with their arm. I expect UCF to load up the box to try to stop this running game here. The Jahiem White, I think, is the running back that you guys have there. Let's pull this up because we did this earlier this week. We talked about players to watch. Obviously, quarterback Garrett Green returning, running back Jahiem White, and then on defense, TJ Jackson. But that combination of Green and White running the ball can be pretty deadly.
Led all power forward rushing last year. We had 3 700 or more yard rushers last year. Garrett Green, C.J. Donaldson, who backs up Jahiem White, and Jahiem White, who was a freshman All-American. And so there were huge expectations for this 9-win football team last year, returning everybody, including Wyatt Milam on the left side, who hasn't allowed a sack or pressure in 3 years now. Obviously, probably going to be the first tackle selected, if not the second. So there was a lot of expectations for this offense. Things haven't gone to plan this year for whatever reason, and it's one of the big reasons we're going to be having this second topic.
Yeah, right. Look, at the end of the day, if you can't pass the ball, if you're going to be one-dimensional, I think it's going to be difficult to beat any teams. Again, in our second discussion of the day, we're going to talk about all the things that can go wrong when you're one-dimensional. But does West Virginia have a plan for Rizk? There's not a ton of tape on him. You've seen some of what Rizk can do. He came in, it looks like a little Johnny Manziel running around out there at times, but he can be dangerous both with his arms and his legs.
Yeah, I think West Virginia struggled against running quarterbacks this year, or any mobile quarterbacks. Even a guy like Eli Holstein at Pitt, who is not exactly like Garrett Green, but he can escape because he's strong. He's hard to bring down, and then once he gets beyond the line of scrimmage, he can pick up 10, 15 yards. He did that like 8 or 9 times against West Virginia, and you look up, he's got 100 yards, and he runs like a 5-flat 40. But, I mean, those kind of guys can hurt you too. I think, West Virginia will probably try to spy him with Josiah Trotter, the son of Philadelphia Eagles great, Jeremiah Trotter.
Yeah.
He's also an impact player on the defense to watch. He's probably one of the best. He's got to be the best freshman linebacker in the country. He runs the defense, and it's unfortunate that he has very few help around him. But yeah, so I think that's the best game plan. That's what they've tried to do at times this year, and they've got athletic linebackers that can do that. Unfortunately, they just only have the two.
Well, our other player to watch here is TJ Jackson. Now he's got 5.5 sacks on the season.
Right.
Extremely productive defensive lineman. Can you talk about TJ Jackson and the impact that West Virginia hopes he has on this game?
Man, what an impact he's made. He is a wrecking ball. He came over from Troy, had a previous relationship with some of the staff members that Neal Brown knows, and so he was able to, because Neal coached at Troy for West Virginia, and we brought him over, and on tape he is exactly what we thought we were getting. He is an inside guy too. He's got those 5.5 sacks from the inside. He's not a guy that lines up on the edge. He's a guy that gets pass rush from the inside in the A-B gaps. So he's extremely difficult to plan for. Baylor literally double teamed him all game long last week. It's the only game in the season where he's not been effective that I can remember. He's pretty much impacted every single game up until this previous week against Baylor, and I think they kind of shed some light on how to block him. You got to have two guys.
Yeah. I think that this is going to be a focus here. UCF has had offensive line issues at times this season, Paul, and letting TJ Jackson run around like a little wrecking ball back there will not be in their best interest in this one, certainly. So I expect them to try to scheme up something that neutralizes his ability to be in the backfield disrupting plays.
Yeah, and he's good. He can line up on the edge too if you need him to. Really good with his hands. His hand fighting is really, really good. He's got a credible bend. He's a smaller defensive lineman at about 6 feet tall. He's about 260, 270. So he's like, in that tweener area, and really plays well on the edge, on the inside. It really doesn't matter. Got a couple running mates on the defensive line with him as well. Sean Martin, who's been around for 5 years now at West Virginia, 6'5", 290 pounds. He's that prototypical 3-down defensive end that sets the edge, kind of lets nobody get around him, has some pass rushing moves, but mostly he's a run stopper he gets back there every now and again, but he's no more than a 4 or 5 sack a season guy, so it's not like we're not talking about, an elite pass rusher, but he certainly does well setting the edge. He's tough to block, 6'5", 290. He's long and lengthy. He gets his hands in good places. And he and TJ do work off of each other, along with a couple of the other defensive linemen.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see. Obviously, being mobile as a quarterback will help a lot with this pass rush. But that's not the only thing that you want to be mobile. We're going to talk about that more after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Crossover is brought to you by our friends at Mint Mobile, Paul. Look, it's there are a lot of choices out there. There are a lot of choices out there in terms of, who you can go with for mobile. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks, Paul. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile says it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with purchase of a 3-month plan, we called them on it. It turns out it really is easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time we spent on the phone waiting to break up with our old provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedon. There you'll see that right now all 3-month plans are $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone number with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with you with all your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile. Get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your 3-month premium wireless plan for $15, go to mintmobile.com/lockedon. That's mintmobile.com/lockedon. Paul, these coaches are in trouble. Before we started recording, we tried to envision the situation that they were in, and This is what we came up with. Two guys on the hot seat. Now, you
on
guys,
the hot couch.
right. You guys burn couches up there in West Virginia.
Right.
Before we get into the situation both these coaches find themselves in, can you explain the couch burning tradition to our listeners?
Yeah, couch burning has it's been around since the 80s that I know of. Really started during the Don Nealon era of Mountaineer football, in which, probably arguably not a more successful era in those 80s and 90s Mountaineer teams that played in the national championship, and went to several what would have been BCS bowls back in those days. And so the way fans celebrated that caught national attention was couch burning. I don't know the specific circumstance that caught attention first, but I do know that it was in the 80s. And interestingly enough, has been associated with us ever since. Even though university tries to distance themselves from it, it's something that they can't get too far away from.
Yeah, I always think that it's interesting when you see these little traditions throughout college football. They tried to outlaw it in 2015. That didn't work. So couches continue to burn in Morgantown.
Right.
But look, these seats are hot for both these coaches. Now, you had some news about Neal Brown,
Right.
and it seems like West Virginia may be looking for a reason to fire him if they lose this game to UCF.
There's no doubt. I think, the university has been wanting him to succeed these last few games. They wanted him to beat Baylor last week. They want to want him to beat UCF and lastly Texas Tech on the road, so that he can win 7 or 8 games. That way they can say, look, he won 9 this year. How do you fire him when he wins 9 and 8 in consecutive seasons? Pretty sound logic, if that's your goal as a university, to win 7 or 8 games a year, I guess. The big thing is next year revenue sharing starts, and I think a lot of universities are saying, how are we going to come up with the money for this? Paying a buyout is not the way you want to start, and I think that's the big fear here. UMass is his alma mater. He played wide receiver at, popped open yesterday, and they have labeled him as one of their top 2 choices. And so that got everything started all over again, although it hasn't stopped, especially after the loss to Baylor, where they were up 3 scores at the end of that game. It wasn't pretty. And in year 6, after a 9-win season, this is supposed to be we had the COVID excuse, we had the year 0 excuse, we've had all the excuses you can come up with. But it comes down to this, Mike. At the end of the day, Neal Brown is 3-18 versus top 25 teams. He's never beaten a team that finished the season ranked in the top 25 ever. And only 3 or 4 times I think he's beaten a team that's finished with a winning record, better than 6-6. That's not West Virginia football. And look, we don't expect to be in the national championship game or even the playoff every year. But in 6 years, you should have been ranked one time somewhere.
Yeah.
And truthfully, more than that. But
well, there's no indication that the program is headed the right direction.
None.
Yeah.
None. And so he's on the couch. I'm going to start calling it the couch.
Well, Gus is on the couch as well, too. He's in his 4th year at
together.
UCF. Yeah, they are there together. And a lot of UCF fans, feel like, hey, things can be accomplished here in this era of college football, especially when there's a 12-team playoff. A team like UCF should always be a fringe playoff contender to make the back half of that playoff. They joined the Big 12, and there's opportunity here. Look at the top of the conference right now. Earlier this season, we were talking about Iowa State as a playoff contender. They faltered down the stretch here, but that has nothing to do with the conference. That was on them. If you win those games, BYU is right in the thick of it. Colorado is right in the conversation. Kansas State was at some point. And the opportunity exists here for both these teams to be part of maybe not the college football elite, but be in the conversation to play those teams and find out where you stand. And it is disappointing, I think, for both these programs to be where they're at right now.
Yeah, and especially West Virginia that's had, they've got so much history to look at. As West Virginia fans, we look at it and think about what we did during the Pat White era. You think about what we did during the Geno Smith era.
He was from Mobile, Alabama, wasn't he? Pat White?
Yes. Yeah,
he was from Mobile, Alabama.
He was in Sydney, Alabama, I believe it's called.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's right there in that area. Everybody, LSU wanted him to play safety. A lot of players, Rich Rod said, well, look, if you want to run, I got something you can do. And the legend was born. The only quarterback ever to start and win 4 bowl games in a career. Pretty awesome achievement. Two BCS wins during his time there. I mean, that's like winning 2 playoff games today. And, it was a great time for us. And then Geno obviously took over with Table and Austin and those guys, and that was a great era too. And unfortunately, the last 2 coaches we have had haven't panned out. And that's going to set your program back when you miss not on 1, but 2 coaches.
It sounds to me like Neal Brown's seat is hotter than Gus is right now.
Oh, there's no question.
Yeah, like,
it's not close.
Now, is it there? It's been rumored that there's already a program targeting Neal Brown, correct?
Yeah, UMass, he and his wife. I was reading yesterday. They've actually had donated something there, like a gymnasium or something along those lines. Like they're enriched in the fabric of that university. Neal, although he's from Kentucky, he spent his first 2 years trying to play at University of Kentucky, and then had to transfer to UMass to play wide receiver. And so he feels like, I'm a part of that place. And a lot of their people would love to have him back. Obviously, a guy who has been just above 500 at the Power 5 level would be great at a place like UMass probably. And Neal won 11 games 3 times at Troy, before he came to West Virginia. So it's not like he doesn't know how to succeed at that level.
Yeah, I think that, when you're looking at this, the buyout for Gus is a hindrance at UCF. And, it's leaning towards, hey, look, we want him to stick around to try to fix this. Gus pulled out all the stops, Paul. He fired his defensive coordinator. He gave up play calling. And he changed his quarterback all in one day, trying to fix what's going on down there.
Sounds like that was brought upon him.
Oh my goodness, yeah. It was quite an eventful week. We covered every second of it, and the results have been a net positive statistically, but it hasn't resulted in the wins that they would like to see. Now they beat Arizona. They should have beat Arizona State. They had the game won. They should have won that game as well, too. Cameron Scatterbu was out, the big-time running back over there, and they lost the game. But, if you're Gus, it's put up or shut up time, I think, down at UCF. Before we move on, though, we agree Neal Brown's seat is much hotter than Gus's right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the mediocrity for Neal is 6 years long now, and not being ranked even once in that time frame. And and it seems like, okay, like for instance, real quick, last week, somehow, some way, even though all this has happened, if West Virginia beats Baylor, all they need is a Colorado loss to go to the Big 12 championship game at that point.
Yeah.
Because Iowa State and Kansas State still play each other. And so all these tiebreakers were going to come into play where somehow 2-loss West Virginia would have been in. All you need is a Colorado loss down the stretch, which admittedly may not happen, but people were saying, look, you still had fate in your hands to an extent, and you still couldn't even get it done against a Baylor team that started off, 0-3 this year?
Right.
They've had, they're now they've won 4 in a row. They're obviously hot, but it's not like that. This is a Baylor program that's insurmountable or should be better than West Virginia. Come on.
Yeah. It's these programs have the potential. The potential is there. They're in a Power 4 conference. You got to get it done here. This is a results-based business. You're only as good as the last good thing you did, unfortunately, in this coaching business. So we'll see what they can do here. I think the loser of this game is in a really bad position going into the final week of the season. But, hey, look, we're going to talk about what we predict will happen in this one right after another word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Crossover is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Paul, the line's 2.5 on this one. This is a pick 'em.
Yeah, and this is at West Virginia at that,
Yeah.
So I think that says more about us than it does about you guys personally.
Okay.
I think they will see the writing on the wall. I mean, basically looking at it, it is a pick 'em. I think either team could win this game, but I have to give the slight edge to UCF
All
coming
right.
in.
Well, look, no matter who you're betting for, go visit our friends at FanDuel and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. This episode of Locked On Crossover is also brought to you by our friends at Skylight. Go check them out. Look, it's holiday season, and I always struggle finding that perfect gift. So if you're missing someone this holiday season and want them to be a part of the festivities from afar, do your send your loved ones a skylight frame. Maybe gift giving isn't your love language. You overthink it, you wind up with something disappointing or nothing at all. Are you buying for someone who has everything or just seems to be unpleasable? That's me. I go buy whatever I want, Paul, right when I want it. And if you're trying to get me to wait until Christmas to buy my PS5, I'm not doing it. I'm buying it for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Or my game.
Right. But our friends at Skylight have you covered over there. It takes less than 60 seconds to set this up. You can add pictures to it digitally from your phone or from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. So it's the gift that keeps on giving, and you can continue to give that gift throughout the year. The touchscreen is a game changer. It looks beautiful in your home. There are two sizes to choose from, 10-inch or a 15-inch gallery frame. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/college. That's skylightframe.com/college. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframes.com/college. Definitely gonna go get one of those Skylight frames for Christmas.
And that's /college.
That's /college. Did I say it enough times?
I think they want us to know that.
Paul, look, it's prediction time, and every time I do one of these crossover episodes, we give a prediction on this one. Now we talked about what we expected quarterback. The run game here is. You know what? As a matter of fact, let's just do a quick comparison. We have these numbers. We showed these to our listeners earlier this week, but the passing numbers for both these teams, right? They're almost identical in terms of pass yards per game. West Virginia has passed it a little bit more, so this averages out to maybe 4 attempts more per game. The average yards per attempt about even, right?
Yep.
And the yardage totals almost about even as well. So now, mind you, this is 3 different quarterbacks for UCF over this stretch, and maybe 2 for West Virginia.
Right.
So we've got this. So keeping that in mind, and then looking at the run game, UCF advantage. This is advantage UCF to me. They run the ball. As a matter of fact, they have the 3rd leading rusher, I believe, in the entire country, and RJ Harvey. He is phenomenal, but almost 700 more yards on the ground for UCF, despite that dynamic duo of Green and White running the ball. Look, now that we've looked at the numbers, what do you think here? What's this? Who wins and why? And give me a score.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how West Virginia performs run defense-wise in this game. Coming into Baylor, literally no one, including Penn State, had ran the ball in West Virginia. T.J. Jackson had been elite. Sean Martin had been elite. Josiah Trotter and Trey Lathan had been elite at stopping the run. Baylor ran on West Virginia last week. They did, and it was a dominating performance by their offensive line. Started to question the buy-in from the West Virginia Mountaineers, and I think that's going to be one of my game keys, Mike. I think one of my game keys is let's do a buy-in check on West Virginia. And see if they're still bought in and flying around like they were just a few weeks back when the Big 12 was still in reach for them. And I think they were bought into that, because they were preaching Dallas since before the year started. So that's one of my first game keys. One more game key is I'm going to see if Neal Brown can play Neal Brown ball. I talk about it every week. Usually when he has 25 first downs or more, he wins the game. It's like he's like 51-3 now, I think, because he lost to Baylor with more than 25. But in a game like this, I think first downs are going to be at a premium because you're going to control clock. Both these teams run the ball and love to do it that way. So we'll see how that goes. That being said, I mean, I have I know a lot of players. I talk to them all the time. I consider a couple of them friends. And the buy-in has faltered at certain places in the program. I'm not saying any of the starters. I'm not being specific here, but I do think that it's just gotten to them. It's been all year. It's been negative. There's been billboards around Morgantown. There's been banners threatened to be flown over the stadium. There's Neal Brown toilet paper now.
Oh my
You've
God.
got UMass openly campaigning for him in a lot of ways. It's not great. So I think UCF wins this game and puts a nail in the coffin. I'm not rooting for that. I'll never root against my team, no matter if it's beneficial or not. But I think these are two teams going in different directions as far as West Virginia is going souther, if that's even a word. I think UCF has definitely lost recently, but do you sense any buy-in or non-buy-in from them?
Here's the thing. They seem to still be playing for Gus.
Yeah.
And they're going out and these guys are playing their asses off every week for this coach. It's been close. And I think that's the thing that's the most frustrating for UCF fans is a lot of the pieces are there. They had great wide receivers. They banked a lot on KJ Jefferson when he transferred from Arkansas, when he didn't work out. And now suddenly you're on your fourth string quarterback looking for answers. And that's today's college football. If you don't have two guys that can get the job done on your roster, you are playing with fire. Last year in the SEC alone, largely believed to be America's best conference, over half of the teams in the conference went to their backup to start a whole game in meaningful time. Meaning, look, somebody got hurt or somebody was playing so bad that they had to be benched for an entire game. And those guys had to step in and get the job done. And if you don't have two guys, it's hard. I think this has been Gus's challenge. He had Dylan Gabriel, transferred.
Nice to keep him.
Yeah. This system needs dynamic athletes, I think, at quarterback, or at least you have to be dynamic at one facet of the game or the other, whether it's with your legs or with your arms. Go back in Gus's history. Whenever he's gotten the guy at quarterback, it's been championship time. So he's got to find that guy. And whether that guy is out there in the portal this offseason or he's on the roster right now, i.e. the emergence of Dylan Rizk, that's the question I think that needs to be answered over the next two games. And it starts in Morgantown with West Virginia. Go out there, win this game. I mean, you just gave all the compelling reasons why losing this game would be embarrassing for UCF.
Right. Yeah. I think West Virginia loses too. I do. I think it's UCF. I'll say 33-27.
33-20.
Probably a high scoring game.
Oh, well, we're still sweating. So I don't know if I like that prediction, because that means in the fourth quarter, man, my shirt's soaked in sweat. I'm gonna go 31-21.
Okay.
UCF in this one.
If that happens, it's a wrap for Neal Brown.
I think they cover in this one. Listen, I know regardless of whether they cover, you cover West Virginia at a high level, and we appreciate that. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, on X, it's at Paul Mountaineer. Also have another one over on X, Locked On West Virginia. Don't have the app for it, but just type in Locked On West Virginia. And then obviously Locked On West Virginia on YouTube. Love covering the Mountaineers, love covering the Big 12. We can go national on some stuff. Cover a lot of Pat McAfee stuff too, because he's newsworthy, but he's obviously a West Virginia alum. So we do a lot with that over there. We do it for the brand.
Well, look, guys, thank you for making Locked On UCF and Locked On West Virginia your first listen of every day. For your second listen, go check out our friends over at the Big 12 podcast. Our guy Drake Toll leads the nation in conference realignment news and holds no punches when it comes to every team in the Big 12, including UCF and West Virginia. You can find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find both of us here on our respective channels on Locked On tomorrow with more Locked On UCF and Locked On West Virginia.